Hi, welcome to this video on the list or arrays exercise on futureskill.com. So we're going to talk about a data structure which is basically a sequence of elements, a sequence of something. Typically we write it something like this. So it could be the sequence of natural or non-negative numbers, like the first three would be those. Or it could be the sequence of letters like A, B, C, the first letters of the alphabet, which I would write like that. And sometimes in some languages you can also mix the data types. So in Python you could even have a list that looks like so, A and then a 0. So that's kind of the weakly typed languages like Python. But in most languages you have to kind of decide on the data type that goes into the list and then keep to that one. So in the first one here we have a list of ints 0, 1, 2, and then so this one, and then here we have a list of strings. So in this case I'm just using characters. And then one important concept is also what is called random access. It's a strange word for it, but it means that you can, once you have a list like one of those that I drew here, you can immediately access the indexes. So this would be index 0 in the list of strings, this index 1, and then index 2 here. So index 0 would access the A, index 1 would access the B, and index 2 would access the C in this list. So that's an important concept. In many languages, the typical way to do that is to write, if you have if this is called a list, so this is what we call list, then you would access index 0 by writing list and then brackets 0. So that would access the A in this case. In some languages you also have to have, or you also have static sizing, could be, or some lists in some languages are static, meaning you decide on the length of the list, how long the list can be at the time of creating it. Whereas in maybe the more modern way is to have dynamic sizing. So let's say in the older languages like C, and the built-in or the most simple list type or array type in C++ and Java and C#, there you would decide on the size of the array when you create it. And then it's a little bit cumbersome to increase the size of it. And so when I say the size, I mean, for example, that it can hold 3 integers or 3 strings. And if you change your mind and you want to put 3 more strings in there, then you would have to do some operations. But more common and in more modern languages, you would have dynamic sizing, like in JavaScript or Python. So then you even the most simple built-in list type or array type, you can have A, B, C like we have here, and then you just plunk on a D. So you would kind of increase it, the size by 1, and just add this D here. That would be dynamic sizing. And of course, in languages like Java and C# and C++, you also have those data types where you can have dynamically sized lists. But you might want to pick the correct one. For example, in Java, it might be called array list, or there's a little bit of reading there on the specific language that you use. So what are you going to do then in this exercise that we have here? Well, it looks something like this. So basically here we have the list shown in this garden. So it goes from top square here, which has index 0, and then we have this element here, index 1, and then index 2. So this is a 3 long list, and in this case we have a tree and we have a bush here. So we're gonna work with trees, bushes, and these empty cells. And in most of the, so this would be level 1 here, just try out the API and plant the first bush, let's say. So if we go to our interface, it can look something like this. And then you write your code here, and you try to plant, in this case, a bush in index 0. I'm not going to kind of solve and run the code right now. I'm just going to go through what you should do in the different levels. But there is also quite a lot of code given here. So if we go back here in level 2, so here we have level 2, then it's called missing bush. So here you should see what the index is where the bush is missing and plant it there and use the API method placePlant. So in the first 3 levels you will use api.placePlant, and when I say API, then you should, I'm referring to the tab that you see up here, API, and here you can read more on api.placePlant, and you can also see exactly how to call it, which will be different. So this is the Python version. If I would change here to Java, it would look a little bit different, as you can see. In the last 3 exercises, so the first 3 here uses placePlant, and the last 3 uses placeHedge, which is the other API method. So in placeHedge, the additional complexity is that you should send in a list. So you need to create a list of strings for placeHedge. Whereas in the first 3 exercises, we are maybe operating on lists, but we only send in a plant string and which index to put it. So using indexing in the API. But in placeHedge, we actually create a list and send it in, like so. Okay, so that was level 2. We use placePlant to just place plant at the right index. So here we have level 3, plant a hedge. So here you create your own list, and here we see that it's 5 long. The list that we have starts with index 0 here and index 4 here. So it's a 5 long list. And this is what it will look like in the end when you have planted the whole hedge. So you create a list and then you plant a hedge from that using api.placePlant. And level 4, then that one is called to use a list. So then we have the new API method, api.placeHedge. And there you should use a list and create a list of your own. There is code given for each language that you solve it in. So if we go back and look here and we go to level 4, use a list, then in the description field here, we see the Java version of the code to create the list and initialize it like so. And you can choose any language here that you might be interested in. Let's go to Python. Then you initialize the list as so, and then you send it to api.placeHedge like so. So that's level 4. And if we go back to, and then level 5, we can look here. So level 5 is complete the hedge. So then you have these holes in the list, and you should, or holes in the hedge, and you should create a list which has some strings for the things to fill in here, which I believe are bushes. And then you should have empty strings in the list for index 2 and 3, where there is already something planted. So you should plant bushes actually. And in level 6, then the additional complexity is that you get the input as a list called hedge directions. And then you should follow that. So the hedge directions are in integers, and it says here in the comments what they denote. So 1 is a tree and 2 is a bush. And then following those hedge directions, you change it from an integer to a string, and then call api.placeHedge again here. So that is what you need to do in our list or arrays exercise. Good luck in solving it.